I will talk about powers just in order. So, let's start just how they appear. Heavyweight. This is a power that benefits greatly warriors who wear, well, armor. Full set preferably. This 20% armor does not apply after all the other buffs, it just increases armor from equipment. Also a flat boost to armor and 2 encumbrance, which will slow you down unless you have a lot of strength. Might slightly impede your dodge, but then again, you might want encumbrance. A lot of things scale with it. For example, Volkit gets buffs from it, Marduk, and Prestige class of Gallows. When you shrug off, when the damage of an enemy attack is reduced to 0 by armor, you deal blunt damage to an adjacent enemy, and the damage scales with encumbrance. This retaliation damage is very useful for builds that are slow, that have a lot of encumbrance and inflexibility, because otherwise the enemy would be just wailing on you unpunished, right? Guard. Per skill level you get block and plus 30% block from each wielded weapon, and 5% chance to block. Solid. Solid defenses. And when you block, when the damage of an enemy attack is reduced to 0 by blocking, you will perform a number of 50 damage hits against an adjacent enemy equal to the skill level. This is very juicy. What this means is you deal guaranteed damage to an enemy, and you perform all the on-hit procs that you have. Any of these kinesis applying debuffs, those debuffs will be applied to your enemy. This is very good. Those hits will not scale, however, with how strong your main hand weapon is. It's not an attack, sadly, so you will have to rely on the debuffs and willpower and other flat damage bonuses. Agility, also a very good defensive and offensive talent. Per skill level you get 50 dodge, plus 50 hit if total weapon size is less than 5. Usually small weapons have less hit, which means this will compensate that somewhat. And plus 100 pierce damage against targets with over 75% life. That's still per skill level, which means that every time you learn more agility levels, it will increase the pierce damage against the targets on high life by 100%. This can get out of hand very quickly. On dodge, you will perform a number of extra attacks against an adjacent enemy, equal to the skill level. This is also very good. Extra attacks do scale with how strong your weapon is. Yeah, they can still be dodged or blocked or shrugged off, but if they do hit, they will deal a lot more damage than just guaranteed hits from block. Aim. Very juicy. Per skill level you gain 100 accuracy, which is alright. You usually have enough accuracy to hit things on attack. If attack range is greater than 1, you will deal pierce damage to the target equal to 10% of the main head hit multiplied by skill level. This is a pretty tasty extra damage instance that doesn't even require you to actually hit the target. And if you get 10 levels in aim, this will mean that you just deal 100% of your main head hit to enemies that you attack no matter what. And if you hit, you apply Mark to the target. Mark is a debuff that increases all physical damage taken by 10%. And the applied mark is equal to the skill level. This is a very juicy debuff for those who rely on physical damage from weapons, and it doesn't require your weapon to be ranged. So this is a very solid skill even for melee fighters. Mark is strong. Mark is very strong. Pugilism, also a very funny skill. This requires your main hand to be a bare fist. It will increase hit damage, which on normal bare fist is rather small, and extra dodge. On attack, if you have bare fists, You perform a number of 20 damage hits against the target, no matter if the attack actually connects or not. Those hits bypass all damage and you use your main hand damage type. What this means is you again deal the guaranteed damage and get your procs. You apply debuffs like bleed or freeze or entangle and other stuff. You can still wield a weapon in offhand, so this will be very nice for example for weapons that have procs on hit. For example, Vine Scythe and Fire Scythe. Very solid skill. Hate Nocht. I don't know how to read this, sorry. Per skill level per RMT armor slot. Again, the Pugilism and Bait Nocht are abilities that have to compensate for not using equipment, because items in this game are very strong. There are no like filler items here. Almost all of them have very strong skills in them, so not wearing them has to come with very good upsides. So Hate Nocht per skill level per empty armor slot increases your hit, which means it increases by 10% damage of your weapons. This will be useful to bypass blocks and armor of enemies and deal monstrous damage to them. You have on start 1, 2, 3, 4 armor slots, which means that if you go completely armorless, completely naked, you will get extra 40% hit per every skill level. 50 armor slot plus 50 armor per every empty armor slot per skill level. This on the start it's nothing much, but it will scale a lot when you invest more into this skill. And extra encumbrance. This might be useful for example, Volkit. On being hit, you will perform a number of extra attacks against an adjacent enemy. Being hit is not a very good trigger, because it means your defenses failed, but if they did fail, you will get back on the bastards if they are adjacent to you. Some enemies in the late game have force. That means they automatically hit you for a little bit of their damage. So this will be a good way to mitigate them. Might. Per skill level you get flat 100 damage, and on adjacent attack, if two-handed, you deal damage to adjacent units, equal to 10% of main hand hit multiplied by skill level. Again, this is like if you have a big weapon, or even a small weapon, that you hold in one hand and your other hand is free, you will be two-handing it, and you will deal a large amount of the damage to enemies that have the misfortune of being next to you. This will be painful even if you do not hit anything. Stand ground. A skill that I really slept on when I first started playing. This is an insane skill, honestly. On stand still, you perform a number of extra attacks against an adjacent enemy, which means that at the cost of one action, just by this person stand still, you will attack an amount of times equal to amount of levels you invested in stand ground. And you apply poise to yourself, 10 by skill level. Poise gives you armor, block and accuracy. So this is a very good defensive buff, a very solid defensive buff that you get with your extra attacks. This is very juicy. Technique. Everyone loves technique. Cost 6 to learn, which is a lot, and per skill level you get a bit of speed and -1 in flexibility, which allows to eliminate the downside of wearing really heavy armors. On step or initial attack, you perform a number of extra attacks against an adjacent enemy. So, if you need to walk up to enemies, if you like walking up to enemies to attack them rather than like standing at them, this will be very good. If you are, for example, playing a class like Mobilization or anything that has to do with evasion or maintaining charge. Next up are fire powers. Pyrokinesis. on adjacent hit you will deal damage to all adjacent units. And on non-adjacent unit you deal fire damage in one tile area at the target. On kill, you deal fire damage to all units in a 2-tile range. Everything on fire! Not a lot of fire, initially. It's 30 by skill level, but this skill is cheap, so you can invest a lot in it if you want to. But it deals fire damage, which can proc other powers in the fire, for example, pyromancy. On prayer standstill, you deal fire damage to all units in a 2-tile range. On dealing fire damage, you apply Scorch to the target. 3 by skill level. Scorch is a debuff that deals damage over time, and also the skill increases fire, astral and lightning damage by the stacks of Scorch on the target. So what does this mean? This means that you can tag enemies with a lot of little fire damages, like from pyrokinesis, and they will suffer damage over time and hurt more from every next instance of fire damage that you deal to them. This can be pretty juicy. Shamshar. At skill level, you gain 50 hit and 50 accuracy. On dealing slash or blunt damage, you deal fire damage to adjacent enemies. This is a skill for those who fight with weapons and won't fire on them, like for example Fire Knights, you know. 150 damage is pretty good. Fire healing, very popular skill, very cheap skill. On hit you apply Scorch to the target. Every time you hit a target you apply to it the damage over time debuff. Deal with fire damage, you heal yourself for 2 hit points multiplied by skill level, and increased by willpower or other powers like Life Chant or Merzot. You will love this power if you deal a lot of instances of fire damage. This counts every little fire damage that you deal, be it from pyrokinesis or Shamshar or anything else. Even fire damage you can deal to yourself with, for example, Royal. This will heal you. Not a lot, but it will heal you. It's very good for sustains. Frenzy Chant. I love this skill. On game turn or prayer, if enemies leave, deal 25 psychic damage to yourself, apply Inflame to yourself, and perform a number of extra attacks against an adjacent enemy. Inflame equal to 5 multiplied by skill level, extra attacks equal to skill level. So, this is pretty insane. If you have prayers that you can recite a lot, for example Humbaba's first prayer, you can pretty much just walk up to enemies, pray, buff yourself with Inflame, that will increase your accuracy and hit by a lot. It gets insane in flame buffs. And you will perform several extra attacks against the poor schmuckies that you walked up to. Master Scourge. On being attacked, you will deal fire damage to the attacker and to adjacent units. Units adjacent to you, if I read this right. And you apply Scourge to yourself. So, this is good for retaliation. So, there are some enemies that are ranged, enemies that are fast, and will get several attacks on you before you can strike them back. This will be very good for slow builds, for example. Or builds that fear being shot from afar by, for example, Fey Partisans or Johara or Collect. You no longer take damage from any source triggered by Scourge, and it is no longer removed with willpower. So this can be worth it even if you don't care about retaliation. If you are just afraid of, for example, Torch Priests burden you to death. Next up, Fire Familiar. On entrance, you will summon a little red dragon familiar. Look at him. He's so fat. He's so adorable. A monstrous beast that spits fire at enemies. Summoned familiars are not limited by your willpower. It's just one guy usually. Willpower limits the amount of spammable summons usually. So what does it do? It's a pretty solid summon. and it heals when you apply Inflame to yourself or to anything else. You heal the red dragon for 20 by skill level, and a random ally gets 30 hit by skill level. So if you have only the red dragon will get the damage buff. If you have other friends might get this. And when you attack, you apply Inflame to yourself, equal to 4 by skill level. This is pretty solid buff also, which might be worth it even if you don't care about having summons. Flame Cult. On summon, you deal fire damage in the path to one enemy in a 4-tile range. On entrance, you summon a number of flame priests that attack with ranged fire. Be aware that this fire damage in the path can hurt your own summons. But the builds that benefit most from on summon procs usually don't really care about their summons surviving. This is very useful for summoner builds that summon a lot of chaff and want to slaughter enemies before things even start. And again, this is fire damage, so it might apply scorches and stuff. Nude form. On Dune over 10 an instance or 100 fire damage, which is not a lot. A small investment in the skills mentioned above or a solid willpower will get you there in like very quickly. You will apply Nude form to yourself, 2 by skill level. This is the transformation that sets your attack range set to 1. You will have to melee in it, and per stack it will apply 2 corrosion to all enemies in a 3-tile range on attack or beat attacked. This is an insanely powerful transformation. It only has the downside of being melee, which is not a downside to most builds. And when you attack or are attacked, you apply this insane debuff to your enemies, which greatly decreases their defenses and also deals fire damage to them when they are attacked. You will spread it in a great area. This is a very good transformation. Electrokinesis, the lightning element. I think the lightning element is the strongest in Path of Achra. On adjacent hit, you deal lightning damage in a straight line starting from your position. What this means is when you hit an enemy, the zap goes through it and to the edge of the stage, through everyone who had the unluck of standing behind your target. On non-adjacent hit, you deal lightning damage in a path to the target. So if you like throw a javelin at the enemy or hit them with like projection or via other source of hits, a lightning will go and seek out the poor bastard, also zapping everyone in his path. On dodge, you will deal lightning damage in a path to all enemies in a 3-tile range. For how much it costs, this is a very strong skill. Electromancy costs 6 to learn, deserved, so it increases speed more than technique does. Also decreases inflexibility, which means you won't have to suffer inflexibility debuff from heavy armors. On prayer or step, you deal lightning damage in a path to one enemy in a 2-tile range. Repeat per skill level, and you apply charge to yourself. Damage that scales with skill, with speed. So this is very strong. You don't even have to fight an enemy. You can just dance somewhere out of his range with melee, and it will slowly perish if you are not fast enough to just kill it in 2 dance steps. And you apply charge to yourself every time you move, which increases your damage dealt by 5. 1 charge stack is not a lot, but as soon as you find a way to generate a lot of charge, the more charge you generate, the more damage you deal for every little instance of damage. So So every tiny scratch that you land on your enemy can potentially become really strong. Skira. This is also a popular skill. Accuracy and dodge. On dealing pierce or slash damage, you deal lightning damage in the path to the target. So this is a strong skill for those who can deal pierce and slash damage from a distance. For example, worshippers of Tengri or Bagaturs, or those who fight with ranged weapons like javelins or pilums. Master charge. Insane skill. On hit, every time you hit, you apply charge to yourself, equal to skill level, and gain 1 speed per stack on charge itself. So you see, this deals damage scaling with speed that will be increased by charge, and this increases your speed per every charge you have. This is a very strong skill. It lets you increase your damage very greatly if you rely on many small damage procs, and you become really fast. Chamakana, also pretty insane skill. On dealing a lightning damage to an enemy with 100% life. So this will work like only once, unless an enemy somehow heals with Cruel Fist or something. You will perform a number of 100 damage hits against the target, which will be increased by like willpower or charge that you will plentifully have from other lightning skills. And the number of hits is equal to skill level. So this works when either your main hand deals lightning damage and you attack someone with it, or if all the lightnings that you send everywhere with lightning skills tag an enemy who is on 100% life, or if you like Orm Jarl and deal lightning damage on someone to anything. This is very strong. This is very strong. Herja. On initial attack you will perform a number of extra attacks against the target. Also cost 6 little, just like technique. Even sprite is similar. Extra, on attack, you deal lightning damage in a path to the furthest enemy. So, it will seek out the schmuck that is furthest away from you, snake through every other enemy that has the misfortune of being in the way. We'll tag them with charge increased damage, probably get Chamarkana. If you took that skill, we'll give them Chamarkana hits and zap that schmuck. So this is a strong skill as well. Fulminant Cult. This is very tempting to take as a summoner no matter what element I specialize in. Often. On summon, you apply charge to yourself. Yeah, and you summon a number of fulminant priests that attack with ranged lightning. So applying charge to yourself as a summoner is pretty tempting because it gives a flat increase to your damage, and usually your own damage is not that great. You usually, if you deal damage yourself at all, you usually have like small stuff like applying like the poison from applying the entangle through your summons, or this burning ooze damage, or this necromancy damage. I will come back to them later. So this is always very tempting if you're to take either fulminant cult or star cult that also applies a flat damage increase by meditate. It all depends on whether you wanna step around or stand still while your summons do the work. Next up, Storm Calling. An expensive skill that these things are fragile. These things are very fragile. Their job is to like zap something and die and distract enemies. They get summoned at random tiles. When you attack, you will trigger your own summon procs, like Flame Cult. When they perish, you will get your own enemy death procs, for example from Blight Cult or Valor culture. This could be useful. I kind of I'm kinda slept on this one. I might wanna try a build centered around it later. Spark form. This transformation applies to spark 10 stacks of spark form. It increases your speed by flat 30, sets your attack range to 1, you will have to melee. Your block and armor are set to 1, which means you will have to rely on dodge for defenses, and only dodge, and a bigger health pool, so that you don't get one shot. Don't sleep on vigor, lads. Per every stack of spark form, you deal 10 lightning damage to all units in 2 tile range on attack. So, area of effect, the lightning damage, that will get increased by charge, most likely. This will only apply spark form on entrance and has no other way of stacking it. I've often seen this used to feed into other transformation, for example Drake form or wild form. So that's another use for it. Toxikinesis, up to poison now. On attack, you don't even have to hit. You deal poison damage to a target, not a lot of it. Just 38 per skill level. On hit, you apply 5 sickness to the target, which is a damage over time that debuffs enemies' damage that it deals with attacks. And on applying sickness, you deal poison damage to the target and to 3 adjacent enemies. So when you hit or otherwise poison enemies, you will deal extra damage. Just a lot of cuts that might really like flat damage increases. Next up, poison skin. This is a very solid skill, very good power. On being attacked, you apply sickness to the attacking unit, 2 by skill level. On dealing poison damage, you heal yourself. So you can see already this energy, right? When you're attacked, you apply a debuff to an enemy, and with toxikinesis, applying this debuff damages your enemy, and then dealing the damage heals you, which means that you become rather much harder to hit if you invest into poison skin a lot. Juicy. Morbumasi. On prayer or standstill per skill level, you apply 10 sickness to one enemy in 3 tile range. So that's a lot of sickness that you can apply to enemies. This skill is dirt cheap, only 2 points, so if you invest in it you can apply a lot of this debuff by standing still. And you increase all poison and death damage by the stacks of sickness on the target. So flat damage increases. Not bad if I would say so myself. Lake Chant. On game turn or prayer, so pretty rarely, if enemies leave, you deal 25 poison damage to yourself. Some self damage. You can you have sustains here, and you apply plague to all enemies. All enemies. The plague will debuff resistances of your foes, and on game turn, it's a damage over time that deals 10 poison and death damage and spreads it. And over an ally attacking an enemy, this will apply plague to the target. So for the stacking this very strong debuff, if you're a summoner, this is very juicy. Acidify, a skill that still has a yellow text, for example, for some reason. Maybe fairly. On attack or summon, you apply corrosion to 3 enemies in the 3 tile range. Like Newt form, this is very good. You will spread a lot of very strong debuff, and on divine intervention you deal poison damage to all enemies with corrosion. So if they reduce you to 0 hit points and you still have full prayers on something, and your deity intervenes, you will deal damage equal to 10 by skill level by target corrosion stacks. This has potential to kill a lot if you apply your corrosion diligently. Burning Ooze. Cost only 2 to learn. On an ally attacking an enemy, you deal fire and poison damage to the target. So 10 by skill level of fire, 10 by skill level of poison. If you're a summoner, this is one of your good. This is one of the good ways to deal damage from yourself, to potentially increase with flat damage increases or apply some kind of debuff via it. For example, Scorch from Pyromancy. On entrance, you summon a number of oozes. Their rising in elemental masses to smother enemies with sickness and corrosion. Oozes are very, very slow, but they are also tough, and they apply corrosion and sickness to enemies if they aren't a bad summon. They can be pretty solid, especially when you focus into them and go Oozmancer prestige class. Then they get extra qualities. Oozmancy. On summon, if at least one ooze is alive, you deal poison damage to 3 enemies in 2 tile range, so not far away from you. And on a prayer you can summon more oozes. So this encourages you to get in the fray and summon more stuff while fighting. Poison Familiar. On entrance you summon a Tsuchigumo Familiar, a cannon spider that sickens enemies with its piercing fangs. On applying sickness or corrosion, a random ally gains extra 30 dodge multiplied by skill level of this, and Tsuchigumo deals poison damage equal to its hit to an enemy adjacent to it. Repeat per skill level. This has potential to get really paid for those who have the misfortune of being next to your spider. Snake Form. I love Snake Form. I loved it even when in its earlier incantation, when it limited your speed to 15. So, on applying sickness, you apply Snake Form to yourself, 2 by skill level. It says your attack range to 1, you will have to go melee, and per every stack you gain 10 dodge and heal 10 if you get a divine intervention. So every time you apply sickness, every time you apply the debuff, you gain extra dodge, pretty much, by the skill. You can stack a lot of this defensive buff on yourself with all the skills here. With Poison Skin, Morbomancy and Toxicness especially. On to Death, also a very strong path. On hit, Necrokinesis deals death damage to the target. Well, that's normal, that's classic. On being healed, Necrokinesis will deal death damage to the closest enemy. So, if you are damaged, or even have self-damages like the chance, and heal from that, you will hurt enemies. This is pretty nice. Cursed Flesh, one of my favorite skills. On enemy death you heal yourself and deal death damage to 2 adjacent enemies. This is pretty nice, especially for the heal, especially if the stage has a lot of weak enemies for you to devour. But the main draw here, the main thing that I love, well, I love the heal as well. So on dealing death damage, on any instance of dealing death damage, you apply Doom to the target. Per stack of Doom, the target is dealt 5 death damage on being attacked, no matter if the attacker actually hit or not. This can be a pretty nasty debuff. Or on you if you face off with this debuff against a lot of enemies, or on enemies even if you're alone, you will curse them for a lot of damage when you stack a lot of it. And especially if you have allies that can also attack that enemy. Very juicy and costs only 2 points. This is a robbery, this is a bargain. Kuga. Per skill level you gain max life. Well, this is what is hit points but another defensive layer, eh? And on every attack or kill you apply plague to one enemy in a 3-tile range. I already told you about plague, that is pretty juicy debuff, so this is like a Death Knight skill. On Divine Intervention you perform this effect 6 times, you apply more plagues. Master Doom. Very beautiful, very powerful. On ally or enemy death, you apply Doom to yourself. Don't worry, because this will eliminate the damage you take from the debuff. You will gain 2 armor per every stack of Doom, which you get 10 per skill level or per enemy or ally death. So this has the potential of scaling your armor stacks very high. This is a very good defensive master. And on being attacked by an adjacent unit, you will deal death damage to the attacker, equal to skill level on stacks of Doom on self. Very good defensive, very good retaliation. Grave Chant. On game turn a prayer, if enemies leave, you will deal damage to yourself, ice, death damage to all units in a range equal to the level of this skill. So this can go pretty far away if you invest in it heavily. And you will repeat with ice damage. You gain extra 200 the damage that you deal in a bigger area. This is pretty juicy. But wait, there is more. On kill of a non-cadaver, you summon a cadaver. This is a very weak shaft that you can either use to distract enemies, or you can just use them as to feed your own Master Doom or whatever on enemy or ally death procs. They won't amount to a lot, but it's still in allies. Necromancy. This is also a skill I struggle to not take when I am a summoner. Because look at this. On ally attacking enemy you deal death damage to the target. This is like burn ooze as well, yeah? In entrance you summon a number of skeleton warriors and skeleton archers. On prayer you summon some cadavers, allied and then you gain 5 speed, but you know what's the main difference between burn ooze and necromancy? With necromancy it deals death damage, which means it procs cursed flesh, which means your allies attacking enemies will stack doom on them, which is a very good debuff for when you have allies. This will snowball like an avalanche. These two skills are very good for any summoner. Dread Legion. All allied familiars are now treated as undead when summoned, so if you have necromancy they will get 5 speed on prayer. On ally on enemy death, a random allied undead gains extra hit, extra damage per skill level, which means that you can pretty much feed your weak summons to strong summons. And on entrance you summon a number of honored dead familiars, heavily armored undead that fight with cursed lances. At some point I should make an overview of summons, because you can really look at them in detail. Blight Cult. Also very good for summoner skill. On ally death you deal death damage in a path to one enemy in a 4-tile range. In a path, which means that it can tag your own summons and kill more of them. On entrance you summon a number of Blight Priests, which are guys bad form, an expensive transformation. On self damage, so on any chant or on royal or any attack if you're an apostle or otherwise, you apply bad form to yourself. This transformation that sets you to melee, that tanks your armor and block, so you will have to rely on dodge again. Oh, and big health pool. Per stack you gain speed and heal 5 on hit. So this will make you like This will tank your defenses, but you will be fast, and you will not have much problems keeping up your health full topped off. This should be solid. On to ice. On hit, you deal ice damage to adjacent enemies, and you apply 5 freeze to the target. And when you apply freeze, you deal ice damage to the target. This is already a very good skill. When you hit enemies, you put a very strong debuff on them that decreases their dodge, their speed, especially their speed, and deals 5 ice damage on standstill. Enemies will not stand still. You are the one that can stand still. So really be careful about standing still when you have freeze on you, and deal 1 blunt damage on being attacked. A very scary debuff. And cryokinesis also gives you extra damage when you apply the freezes. So this is good. Clearmancy. On prayer or standstill, you apply 5 freeze to 2 enemies in 3 tower range. So in an area, this is their cheap skill again, like Mormomancy, you could apply a lot of this debuff, and you increase all ice and physical damage with stacks of freeze on the target. So all ice and physical. The more freezes you apply, the bigger are the instances of ice damage from cryokinesis, from the blunt damage you get from freezes, and from just bashing their head in with a stick. Isaz. Per skill level you gain more block and chance to block. This is a solid defensive buff. On dealing pierce or blunt damage, blunt like the one you get from freeze, you deal ice damage to 1 enemy in a 2 tile range. So extra ices, not bad, why not? Aurora Chant, very strong. On game turn or prayer, if enemies live, you deal astral damage to yourself, and you apply meditate to yourself, equal to the skill level. The meditate will give you the extra 10 damage dealt on every instance of damage, but will be mostly removed if you step. So if you want to benefit from it, you want to stand still a lot, or transport yourself otherwise with teleports, for example. So if you have meditate, when you chant, you will deal ice damage to the closest enemy and repeat per skill level. So what does this mean? You invest like 3 times into Aurora Chant. You will blast yourself, you will apply meditate to yourself, and you will and the enemy, no matter how close or far, one enemy will get blasted with ice, which will be in several times, and these several times will be increased with meditate buff. Juicy, especially if you have other sorts of meditate. Frost pulse. Per skill level you gain encumbrance. This encourages slow builds for ice, which is powerful, I think. On game turn or divine intervention, if enemies leave, you deal ice damage to all units in a tile range equal to the skill level. So if you invest a lot in the frost pulse, you can cover a lot with a wave of ice every game turn. The damage is equal to the total encumbrance you have by skill level. So if you go all in on heavy armor and heavy weight and other encumbrance increasing stuff, you can really bring the pain with this. It doesn't trigger very often, only game turns or divine interventions that are not very common, hopefully. But this can bring the pain, Frost armor. This will increase your armor by a respectable amount, but also increase your inflexibility. This decreases the damage bonus from willpower, which means you just have to rely on strength and other sources of increasing your damage. This inflexibility will slash your speed, which means you want to increase your minimum speed with more strength. And every time you shrug off or block, you will apply life freeze to the attacker. Solid for retaliation, especially without the ice powers. Master freeze. Per skill level you apply more freezes. This is good, this is already good. And when you stand still, if enemies leave, you apply freeze to yourself. Again, you don't take damage from that, and you heal. And you gain armor per every stack of freeze. Again, freeze, this master eliminates damage you take from it, but it does not eliminate the slowdown. You will still have the buff dodge and speed, so you will have. So if you do benefit from the standing still thing on this master, you will have to increase your minimum speed. Otherwise, the defensive buff is okay, and so is the heal. Offensive, the stacks of freeze applied to you is also already good, I think. Ice familiar. Glika, my beloved. The little ice troll to us. I don't know if that's good, actually. It's, finders keepers. On Atlas you summon Glika familiar. It's a large shell beast that pummels enemies. It deals a very solid damage every time you apply freeze or poise. The martial buff. You will heal the Glika for 10 low skill level. He freezes also. If the Glika gains 10 hit, it will increase its damage by skill level by 10 by skill level. And a random ally, as the Glika or any other friends you might have, gains extra armor. On standstill, Glika performs an extra attack per skill level. So you pretty much it's stand ground for when you don't want to stand your own ground. It's a very good familiar. Geist form. The much nerve transformation. So on prayer, you apply Geist form to yourself, 5 by skill level. This is a very dedicated form, a very involved one. It limits your speed to 10. You will not go higher than 10 no matter what your minimum speed is or how much the buffs you have that increase your speed. Your hit is set to 1, so you will not be dealing damage with weapons really. You will have to rely on other ways to deal damage. You will perform all your game turn action on standstill. For example, Frost Pulse and Chance and whatever else. So this is all a very solid. Performing game turn on standstill is very strong. And per every stack of Geist form on yourself, you heal 1. Not a lot for this cost, And you apply 1 freeze to all enemies on game turn if enemies leave. So every time you stand still, you perform that game or your game turn, you heal a little bit, a teeny tiny little bit, and you freeze everything on the screen, which can deal damage with Krakenesis to them, or really strongly buff your ice familiar, and just generally slow them down to a crawl. The freeze will be equal to your Geiststorm stacks, so this is a very strong power, also. Astral Kinesis. To the astral element. The purple. On attack, you deal astral damage to the target. On attack, no matter if you hit or not. Can be used. These things can be pretty useful when you are in early game, when your hit isn't great, or when you aren't sure about your ability to scale up your main hand damage. And on hit, you deal astral damage in the path to 2 enemies at any range. any range. So like two idiots to go hunt and it will blast them for 30 by skill level. Again, this is not a lot, but it scales with skill level and it's dirt cheap. Asimalak. Everyone loves Asimalak. Everyone who wills two-handed weapons. Per skill level, if two-handed weapons, +1 attack range. Insane, you know? If you have if you have a weapon that's, you know, a big one that has equality if two-handed attack area, it will attack every single enemy in the area increased by Asimalak. So if you invest in this, you can just chop everyone in the area of like the whole stage here, unless they have cover, unless they hide from you. Like they should. And every time you hit, you deal astral damage to 3 enemies at any range. There is no hiding. There is no hiding. They will still get blasted. Projection. You're a wizard. On standstill, per skill level, you will perform a hit against one enemy in 4 tile range. Fixed damage of that hit is 20 by skill level, which is not a lot, but you know, you just have to stand still and some schmuck in 4 tile range gets blasted by the hit and applies all this nasty stuff that you can give to them on hit. On prayer, if encumbered and flexible, you will perform all standstill actions. This is pretty solid. Some standstill actions can be really juicy. And also right, the hit is scales with skill level. So if you invest a lot in this, you will perform a lot of hits against many enemies in this rather big range. For range is pretty big. Astral Stoicism. It's a very good defensive skill, if you don't like being in melee. On building deals damage by an enemy, you apply poise to yourself, a defensive buff, and teleport the attack into a random tile. Preferably somewhere far away from your brittle wizard body. The attacker applies 5 stasis to itself. It's just to prevent more teleporting. It's not a really buff. Astro Hunting. Per skill level you get less inflexibility. I didn't know why this really is here, but yeah, it lets you be faster. On standstill, you teleport to the closest enemy. Very nice. When you're a lumbering hulk of a heavy armored cyclops, you apply 5 stasis so that you can keep jumping. You deal lightning damage to adjacent units and repeat with astral damage, 100 per skill level. Pretty solid stuff. Every so often you can just jump at an enemy and blast them for 200 damage per skill level. And here's the funny. When you stand still, you jump to the enemy and stand ground works after that. So you can just be a mage warrior that never actually moves in combat and keeps all those poison meditate stacks forever. Also, if you're like really insane, if you want to really embrace the glass cannon, you can perform these actions on killing an enemy if you have no armor equipped. You can go like be notch to remedy the defense tanking, but you know, if you do not have any armor equipped, you will jump to an enemy, you will kill an enemy with this blast of lightning and astral, and you will keep jumping at the next poor bastard until they're all dead, or until you jump on an enemy that is too tough for you to handle. And even then you can just invest and stand ground to use normal attacks to kill an enemy and then continue the jumping. This skill can get pretty insane if you want to work with it. Master Teleport. On prayer you teleport to a random tile. On self or any unit teleport you apply meditate to yourself and deal astral damage to one enemy at any range. The meditate applied is 2 by skill level, the damage is 25 by skill level. It will get It's not a lot, but it will get increased by meditates anyway. So, who is this useful for? For astral hunters, for prestige classes that teleport a lot, for worshippers of Fafda, and for summoners who teleport their allies around. This can be pretty nice. Innervation. Allies become immune to damage dealt by you. This is a skill that wants your allies to stay alive, rather than like make a lot of disposable chaff and then murder them for the sake of the mean, to feed them to a stronger allies or whatever, or punish enemies for killing them, or to just make space for making more on summon procs. So yeah, this is a skill if you want your allies to stay alive, if you value their input, and it increases speed and accuracy and hit of them, so it makes them hurt enemies plenty. Shimmergang. Every time you teleport, and when you enter the level, you summon a number of astrophytes. They are pretty brittle, so they are like, pocket sand for the teleporting guy. Star Cult. One of the most expensive skills here, maybe the most expensive, I didn't check it yet. So, on summon you apply meditate to yourself. This is a 10 flat damage increase. I already told you that this average flat damage buffs are very good for summoners. Because they have teeny tiny damages they deal by themselves. On entrance you summon a number of star priests that will attack the range summons. Next up, psychic element, psychokinesis. On stand still or hit, so you can just stand still at enemies to kill them, like a wizard. You deal psychic damage in a path to an enemy in a 5 tile range, this is really far away, and you apply repulsion to yourself. Repulsion is a buff that deals 1 psychic damage to the attacker on being attacked, so every time an enemy tries to hurt you, every time an enemy tries to attack you, they get damaged, they get blasted. Psyblade, per skill level, if main head is a bare fist, increase your attack range. Pretty good. This is like an Asimalak for those who have bare fists. On hit, if bare fist, you deal psychic damage to the target and deal slash damage to the target. It's at 50 per skill level. Very solid. If you have a lot of hits, for example, if you're a pugilist, you'll perform those 20 damage hits, and each of those hits will also blast them for 50 by skill level of Psyblade. This can really hurt. Mind Fighter. A cheap skill that gives you some defenses, dodge, armor, block, and chance to block. It seems not a lot, but if you stack a lot of this 2-point skill, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna be really nice, I think. On adjacent attack, if two-handed, if you have a two-handed weapon, you apply repulsion to yourself, and you deal psychic damage in the line started from a target. So like the schmuck and everyone that stood behind him. Master Repulsion. +1 stacks of any repulsion applied by you from everything that's in this thing, or any other. From items or prestige classes you get more repulsions. And on game turn, pretty rarely you apply 10 repulsion to yourself. But get this, you gain block per every stack of repulsion on yourself, just +1. But it's really good, because this element, it gives you a lot of repulsion. And extra defenses will be good. Oh, also there are other sources that make repulsion. Not just a retaliation, but also a defensive thing. For example, Mesmer, prestige class, and one of the robes that you can find on the path, they will give you an extra armor per repulsion. and also increases all astral and psychic damage by the stacks of repulsion on yourself. This skill has the potential of making any little instance of psychic or astral damage that you deal really hurt, because repulsion is a very common buff that you can get from this path. Amplify pain. You or an ally dealing damage by an enemy, you deal 5 psychic damage to yourself and 5 blood damage to yourself. Like tiny scratches. Every time you or an ally get hurt. On self damage, you deal on any self damage, including those two. You deal psychic damage to all enemies in 2 tower range and apply repulsion. So, enemies in a 2 tower range from you, per every skill level, they get blasted for 40, because this works twice. And you get some more repulsion to yourself. It's okay. Psychic retort. On being hit, you perform 2 hits against the attacker and apply some repulsion to yourself. 5 per skill level. Solid. Very good retaliation skill. Hit damage equals 2 stacks of repulsion itself, so it can be small, it can be big, but again, it hits. What skills here is stacks of repulsion, so this is probably a 1-point wonder, 2-point wonder. Projective link. A very juicy summoner skill. On ally hitting an enemy, you perform a number of hits against the target. 15 damage hits. Again, it will be increased by by meditation, by charge, but by anything else, and by any debuffs that you apply to the enemy. This can get very juicy. This scales with the amount of that you invest here, so you can hit an enemy that your ally hit like a lot of times. On an ally being hit by an enemy, that enemy performs a 15 damage hit against you, which is not ideal. It's a very small damage hit, yes, but enemies often have debuffs that they apply on hit, so you can find yourself really entangled or frozen or scorched, so you will have to deal with debuffs now somehow. What's next? Mass Mind. On game turn, on divine intervention, very rarely, you deal psychic damage to all enemies in a range that scales with this skill, and you summon a number of glinting blades. This scales with number of allies, so if you have a lot of chaff summons, you might like this. Glinting blades are brittle and probably solid for a summoner that stands behind allies. Mirror image. Description flexibility, I told you already what it does, and 100 dodge, a respectable amount. 100 dodge is a very solid buff. On dodge, you summon a number of psychomorphs, so that's a ranged summon that shoots your enemy. It might be slightly slow, but again, these psychomorphs will distract your enemies. They will shoot them from a distance. It's a pretty solid extra every time you dodge. On to life. Vinokinesis. It costs 2 to learn, cheap like all of them. Every time you attack or hit, you apply 5 entangle to the target. Entangle is a very strong debuff. Like freeze, it decreases dodge and speed and deals 5 pierce damage every time they step. So every time they try to get closer to you, to go for your innards, they take 5 pierce damage. So will you. So also beware of this debuff. On you or an ally applying entangle, you deal poison damage to the targets, 30 by skill level. Not a lot, but pleasant. It can go bigger. Piercing Vines. This is an insane power, lads. It's a really insane power. On game turn, you apply entangle to enemies in 30 range, and yada yada. On hit, if target has entangle, you deal blood damage to a target, equal to 5 by skill level, apply target entangle stacks. You can see how this can get really out of hand, right? You can apply a lot of entangles to your target. It will get multiplied by 5 and by skill level, so this with some good source of entangle and solid willpower, this can deal like thousands of damage every time you hit. And if you have good sources of hitting, like guard or pugilism or the others, this is going to hurt a lot. Just combo of Chamakana, Vineknesis and Piercing Vines. You will deal a lot of hits with this. It will really hurt. Master Entangle. On building damage, you apply Entangle to yourself and adjacent enemies. On being attacked, you deal pierce damage to the attacker. So, any damage dealt to you, by yourself included, will apply Entangle to you and any enemies that are adjacent to you. And on being attacked, it will retaliate at them. Like Master Scotch, So, it is a pretty solid retaliation skill for those who don't mind being slowed down by Entangle, especially like Arborus. Life Chant. Everybody loves Life Chant because it gives a solid chunk of max life and +5 to all healing. Just flat +5 to every instance of healing you get. So teeny tiny heal from poison skin every time you deal poison damage, teeny tiny heal you get from fire healing, other stuff, it will get +5 for every skill level. Very good. On game turn or prayer, if enemies leave, you heal yourself. So some more. On game turn or prayer, if enemies leave, you regenerate 50 by skill level hit points. This is also a very solid way to sustain. Invigoration. Allies become immune to damage dealt by you, and it gives buffs to summoned allies. It's a sister of Innervation, except Innervation is offensive and Invigoration is defensive. It will make your allies tougher, plus 30% life, which makes them bigger, which make already strong allies stronger. Plus 50 flat life for allies that are brittle in the first place, for example, so Ball Lightnings and Mura's Mirrors and other chaff. Plus 50 armor and plus 25 poison and blood resistance. Arboromancy will summon Creeper familiars and boost speed of plant allies. It's much like Necromancer here. And on a light plant attacking an enemy, you apply Entangle to the target, which will proc the Vineknesis poison dash, by the way. This is okay. Growth Cult. Every summoner loves a bit of Growth Cult as well, On summon, you regenerate 10 by skill level hit points. So you can sustain by summoning more. On entrance, you summon Growth Priests, and about them I can say that they're nice to have around, because every time they attack, they heal you and your allies. They heal all allies adjacent to them. So if you can stand close to them, you will get a bit of healing as well. Overgrowth. You're a life summoner, you're going to go into overgrowth. The allied familiars are now treated as plants now with sound. You can stack that with Red Legion, by the way. So they will be undead plants. So on game turn or rare, if enemies leave, you summon Gizas. Those little guys with spears. Allied plants gain extra max life per skill level. So the entangling guys with spears will attack your enemies and entangle them. On an allied plant being attacked, you apply entangle to the attacker. So if you fill the place with plants, with those roots and creepers and stuff, and familiars, every time they get attacked, you apply entangle to them, you debuff their speed, you deal damage to them when they try to pursue you. You deal poison damage to them. You know, pretty nice. Vine form. Also, like for a hybrid summoner fighter, if you want to fight alongside your summons, this is a good one. Every time you summon, you apply this transformation to yourself. You will get a monstrous debuff to your fire resistance. You will summon a root every time you attack. Extra to feed into overgrowth. And Arbormancy. You perform an extra attack against an adjacent enemy on step. Like technique. Per stack, you heal 5 to all allies and grant plus 10 hit to allied plants every time you attack. So you apply this fine word to yourself, and every time you summon you apply more, and every time you attack while you're a plant, it gives you an extra attack on step, so you can just jump in at allies and then go back behind them and still get an attack in. Note that this does not limit your attack range, so you can still like throw javelins or attack with staff magic or stuff from behind your allies. Chemokinesis. Blood element is also a very strong one. Chemokinesis on hit applies a debuff bleed to the target. And on applying bleed, you deal blood damage in the past to enemies in 4 tile range. Pretty far away, you know. In the plus also. Good. So, bleed. This is probably the worst debuff that one can get hit by in this game. Because anyone who gets bleed on them, they are dealt 5 blood damage every time they step or attack. So, if you're fast, or an enemy you hunt this on is fast, they will suffer. Every time they try to go at you or attack you, they will be dealing damage to. They will be dealt blood damage. And if you manage to apply a lot of bleeds on them, they will pretty much bleed themselves to death. Godcleave. Very cheap skill. It increases your damage, increases your speed, and every time you attack, you deal 15 slash damage to yourself, which will feed bad form and other skills that like you dealing damage to yourself. And you deal blood damage to adjacent units, 100 by skill level. A lot like Might, but you know, more brutal. Gore Chant. On game turn or prayer, if enemies leave, you deal blood damage to yourself and summon a number of bleeding dead. On being dealt damage, you deal blood damage in the past to one enemy in a 4 tile range. This is a very good passive. Every time you deal damage, including damage you deal to yourself with like gore cliffs or other stuff, someone will suffer in a 4 tile range. Pretty juicy. Royal. Everybody loves Royal. It's like a life chat for blood frames that inside me people. Every time you hit, no, successfully, you heal for 5 by skill level. You apply inflame to yourself, a very solid defensive buff, and you deal fire damage to yourself. You can kind of see a problem here, right? 15 fire damage is more than 5, but so you will have to invest 3 levels into this skill, 12 points to outpace this, or you want to have solid willpower, or you want to also invest in life chant to outpace the self damage for this to be useful for sustain. But still, this is worth it for heals and for inflames. Very good. And for self damages as well, you know, if you're into self damages. Bloodbath. On dealing blood damage to an adjacent unit, you heal the so you know the blood path deals blood damages a lot, and it offers those nice ways to sustain. On being dealt physical damage, you deal blood damage to adjacent units, so this is a very Gorcliff and Bloodbath is a very obvious synergy, you know? You deal physical damage to yourself, slash, and you deal blood damage to adjacent units, and you heal from that. Gortide. A really brutal name in it. Per skill level you gain max life, a solid chunk of it, same as life chant. Kuga. On game turn or divine intervention, a bit rarely, you deal blood damage to all units in 3 tile range, equal to skill level multiplied by missing life. So, if you have a big health pool, if you have a lot of strength or vigor, or investment in the skills that increase your max life a lot, you happen to miss a lot of hit points on a game turn, or if your hit points are reduced to 0, you know, you will miss a lot of hit points. This will deal a lot of blood damage to your enemies. This is very solid for builds that are slow. This won't do a lot for someone who is quick, but still very good. Master Blade, also a very good master, just like Master Doom. On attack, you apply bleed to yourself. You no longer take damage from bleeds, so every time you attack, you apply 5 bleed to yourself, and when you are dealt damage by an enemy, dealt damage, not hit, not attacked, just any damage they deal, be it just like a straight scratch from burning your minion, or zap from electric priests, or anything like that. On being dealt damage by an enemy, you deal blood damage in a path to the damaging unit. This is the king of kings of retaliations. This is the king of kings of retaliations. 5 by skill level by stacks on bleed on self. Insane. Gorkult. On summon, you deal 15 blood damage to yourself and apply bleed to one enemy in a 4 tile range. On entrance, you summon a number of gore priests. So what does this do? Dealing damage to yourself will trigger stuff that for example punishes stuff for being dealt damage. So you enter a stage, you summon a gore priest, you deal blood damage to yourself, and gore chant deals blood damage in the path to one enemy in the 4 tile range, and then you summon more, and so you hurt yourself, and then you hurt enemies with this. And those who survive this summoning onslaught, they will have bleeds on them, and even then, and after that you can like increase the amount of chaff you summon while killing your own allies and enemies with grave chant, and you can also take blight cult to also deal damage to enemies while you kill your allies. This is a pretty funky combo, I think. Blood Familiar. This is Hemogoblin, not Hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is inside of you, Hemogoblin is outside of you if everything goes well. On entrance, on divine intervention, you summon a Hemogoblin Familiar. The Hemogoblin is a frenzied blood rejection that drains enemies. On self damage or applying bleed, random ally gains speed. The Hemogoblin makes it hurt more. So every time you hurt or every time you bleed enemies, Hemogoblin gets angrier and faster if it's the only ally that survived. For now, this concludes the usual power overview. I'll go on to prestige classes later. Good luck on the path to the obelisk and to glory.